and even
Wait,
tried to say it.
you said 114 minutes. Mine was 124 minutes. Why was mine longer? Did I watch the director's cut? No.
Why would you
No.
subject yourself to that? Hi, I'm Shamar Griffith.
And I'm Andrew Tejada. We're going through superhero productions to let you know if they're still fun or the hype around it was dumb on
Cape or Cap, a Black Nerd superhero podcast. Welcome to this week's installment of Cape or Cap, a Black Nerd superhero podcast. My name is Shamar Griffith, codename Comic Shams.
And I'm Andrew Tejada, codename Arate.
Andrew and I have known each other since 1996.
That was the year Bob Bergen voiced Marvin the Martian in Space Jam because he was both Aliens and Looney Tunes. He was, the middle ground between them. And Bob Bergen would go on to voice Baby Hercules, Baby Tarzan, Baby Quasimodo, and also No Face from Spirited Away.
What? He was like, let me change up my portfolio real quick, and instead of voicing all these baby characters, let me go into something that was just like, honestly, to this day, No Face from Spirited Away still creeps me out.
Oh yeah. And I also do want to mention Bob Bergen, of course, has done a lot more since then. He's been in like every Star Wars game, but those were the one. That's just a funny run to me, so I just had to point it out.
No, it makes sense, especially we're talking about alien life forms, and some of these actors tended to have some very childlike responses in their dialogue. Because today's episode, we are covering the DC movie that is probably known as the third worst DC movie ever created. I'm putting Catwoman in that list, putting Steel, because even though they didn't have the DC moniker or anything like that, they were DC films. And the trinity that would pull that all together is 2011's Green Lantern. Yes, at a runtime of 114 minutes, this PG-13 film would continue to cause trauma amongst comic book fans for now 13 years. People are still unsure about where to put this. There was even at one point, I believe, that Ryan Reynolds did a rewatch of it, if I'm not mistaken, and even tried to say it.
You said 114 minutes. Mine was 124 minutes. Why was mine longer? Did I watch the director's cut? No. No.
Why would you subject yourself to that? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry for the extra 10 minutes that you had to ordeal.
Oh, that explains it. Why it never ended.
It's the darkest version of that lamb chop song. Well, I mean, it might give us a hint already of where we're leaning, but we're going to definitely talk about this film directed by Martin Campbell, who, I gotta say, going through the list of the people who were involved in this film has been mind-blowing. So Martin Campbell directed this film, and he also directed films such as James Bond's Casino Royale.
Oof.
And James Bond's GoldenEye.
My goodness. Where did you go?
As well as The Mask of Zorro and its sequel, Legend of Zorro.
Straight bangers all across the place.
Also, this film had not one, not two, because whenever we do superhero films, I notice that we've had the duo of writers and screenplay writers. Today we have four. We got Greg Berlanti and Mark Guggenheim, who basically just ran DC productions for the majority of 2010. We got Michael Green, who is known for doing work on Logan, Alien Covenant, Blade Runner 2049, and Murder on the Orient Express.
Those are all really good movies.
Right. And then we have Michael Goldenberg, which I'm assuming caused a lot of back and forth with like who are we talking to in the writers' room with all these people starting with their name of M. Um, we got Michael Goldenberg who wrote Contact. I have beef with Contact before we talk about. I know people regard it as a pretty okay film, a good film. I actually have beef with it. I just did not like how it went. But fortunately, Michael Goldenberg would eventually become the one would eventually write the one Harry Potter film that wasn't written by Steve Kloves, and that is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix.
I don't like that one.
This might explain some things for you. All right, so the Green Lantern, eventually we've known it through time to be one of the worst movies. It got 25% on its Rotten Tomatoes score. It currently has that right now. And 45% on the audience score. I'm not sure if that was the number back in the day, but I'm pretty sure that it was probably on par based off the reviews that it had gotten. And the people that were involved on this cast list is, of course, we have the star of the film, Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, played by Ryan Reynolds. This was his like basically introduction to the superhero storytelling of things. Taika Waititi, still shocked that he's in this film, will play his friend Tom.
You got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm. This movie though does have I will say that this movie in particular does have a close place in my heart, because it was the movie that my before she was wife and girlfriend, what my wife and I saw together for the first time. And apparently this is also the movie that is where Ryan Reynolds will meet his wife, where he will meet Blake Lively, who is playing Carol Ferris. So see, y'all, there's a little diamond in this very, very coarse, very rough that we have of a film. Next up, we got Stanley Tucci's I'm assuming the clone. We got Mark Strong, who has done some great work. Don't mind me. He is playing the character Sinestro. Peter Sarsgaard is playing the character Hector Hammond, who goes through quite a change through this film. Thankfully for this next person is only one of him this time, as we have Tamura Morrison, who is playing Abin Sur. Morrison, as you know, will go on to play Boba Fett. Next up, the late Michael Clark Duncan is voicing Kilowog. I have some thoughts about that there. Clancy Brown would be voicing Parallax. And somehow, in the most surprising get in this film, I actually forgot she was in this. Angela Bassett is Amanda Waller? Sorry, Dr. Amanda Waller.
Yeah, I can't even open that can of worms. We have to get to it later. Otherwise, you won't even leave the intro.
Yes. All right, so let's do this quick, because with that, let's see if this film should escape our sight and start our Cape or Cap review of Green Lantern.
So in the sign of every good movie, you get narration on a dark screen. Let's go, baby.
Yes.
Let's go.
Exposition Central.
So there's a long story about how the Green Lantern Corps was formed. If you somehow have managed to get this far and not heard of the Green Lantern Corps, it is powered by willpower. They have rings that channel willpower that they have to recharge every once in a while, and they go around the universe. They're basically space cops. They go using their Green Lantern rings to bring justice around the universe. We get all of that. I hope people who were unfamiliar with it before got that. So we find out that there's a Green Lantern named Abin Sur who was fighting this other Green Lantern Guardian called Parallax. Parallax, instead of willpower, he wanted to harness fear. So Abin Sur was like, "No, thank you, sir," and locked Parallax in a deep hole that nobody could emerge from, except if 3 alien dudes just come by and Parallax kills them, and then he can instantly get free.
Yeah, so while we're sitting here watching a redone version of Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers to be exact.
Yes. Oh, Rita, on that Rita timing.
Yes. We do see though that Parallax escapes by absorbing the fear. This will be later explained, but we're assuming this being said that he absorbs the fear of these individuals upon seeing him. And we jump now to a 6-month time jump where Abin Sur is speaking with Sinestro, a hologram of Sinestro, who tells him the fate of a few planets that have been lost due to Parallax's presence. No one really knows that it's really Parallax is doing this. They just know that like each planet has been left basically decimated and filled with this some sort of like yellow energy. So Abin Sur, once he closes off the call, this is when he starts hearing the voice of Parallax calling out to him, who immediately finds and attacks him. This causes Abin Sur's plane or ship to start careening towards the next habitable planet that he has on his radar, because it's time for him to choose the new bearer of his power ring. So obviously, because it's our superhero storytelling, we hop up on Earth, where we're introduced to the most Johnny Storm version of Hal Jordan I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
Now, this is where the movie would have gone if it was the regular cut. But in the director's cut, oh boy, after that opening scene and before Abin Sur is attacked by Parallax, we get a 1993 flashback. That's right. We go back to 1993 and see how a young Hal Jordan watch his dad prepare for a test flight, which sounds really dangerous. He, instead of going to school, young Hal, like he's 8 or 9, runs all the way to an airfield, watches his dad get in a plane that he's really confident about. As soon as the plane moves, I kid you not, it explodes. Okay? It explodes. There must have been some sabotage. It crashes. It looks like his dad's gonna be fine. Hal runs to try to see his dad. His dad stands up, flashes him a thumbs up, and then explodes. So this is what you get in the director's version. And now we cut to present day. Then we cut to present day with Abin Sur. And then, after all of that, we get the next scene of the movie, which is arguably this movie's 4th opening, where we introduce Hal Jordan.
I'm sorry, I just have to go back on that 1 second. You mean to tell me in the director's cut, they did a time jump and then did a flashback?
Yes. Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Is this movie directed by The Flash? What?
Yes, if you watch the director's cut, it feels like you watch a monologue exposition, a random cut to 1993 childhood, another scene in space that is sometime after the first scene. You have to do the mental math to figure out when that scene is even happening, and then you get introduced to Hal Jordan. So, I mean, obviously the finished cut sounds a lot smoother, but yeah, no, there was an extra 10 minutes on Hal Jordan's childhood.
This explains why there are 4 writers on this. Each one wanted an opening. But yeah, we open up to Hal Jordan being introduced. It's clear that it's the night after a long game of Uno that he has played with somebody that is there. So he realizes how late he is for work. So he drives over. In my cut, I'm just assuming there's like a couple of things where he's just like, he's driving around. There's like, he almost causes accidents, but he blames this on other people. And then eventually he pops up at work at Ferris Air, where they're planning to do some kind of test on this new set of planes, because he is a test fighter pilot, or a test pilot.
Yeah. And
canonically.
it's real quick. It's worth mentioning he almost causes a car crash because he's trying to wrap a present while driving at 80 miles per hour in newspaper. We'll come back to it, but I just needed to throw that out there because I that comes back.
So we see him now in the locker room. He's trying to change into his flight suit. He's having now a conversation with Carol Ferris, who's introduced. This is the first time I think I've ever seen Blake Lively not blonde, so it was very shocking for me. She's reprimanding him for showing up late. There's a little bit of banter because he's obviously playing the guy who's too cool for school. So now they hop on over to them flying in their fighter jets. I'm assuming that the jets that they're fighting against are unmanned, that they're trying to test out some kind of technology. honestly, if you don't want to bother yourself watching this one, watch Stealth. It's not as great of a film, but there with like Jessica Biel and I think Jamie Foxx.
Or
It's
Top
not
Gun.
or Top. Yeah, my bad, my mistake. Top Gun. Watch Top Gun. So as they're flying around, we do learn that Hal's the type of guy who apparently would be willing to sacrifice his like the person he's flying with. There's also some subtle nods to the comic book stuff because for Carol, the plane that her call sign is Sapphire, which will be like eventually will be her name when she becomes more villainous. So as they're flying around and Hal decides to sacrifice Blake Lively's character here, not really sacrifice, but really just like there's like a electronic kind of signal, kind of like laser tag. So she gets tagged. He pushes the limits of his plane in order to push the limits of the unmanned fighter jets. And this causes all the planes to start falling back down to the ground. He's able to shoot down both of the planes, but he's unable to pull his own plane out of careening towards the ground. Now, in my cut, this is when I got the flashback of his father dying. And I was like, okay, I can see it making sense, but I would hate to wake up from a dream where my father dies constantly.
Yeah, the director actually, this is where something I'll let in a little early, but the director actually was really pissed that they did this during this scene. He actually did not want the flashback in there because he preferred the full scene. All right. What triggers this flashback is unclear because his ship was in working order for the most part. So it's unclear what triggers the flashback exactly. But what I can say is Iron Man already did it. Anyway,
yes.
Hal ejects the same scene, guys, the same scene. Hal ejects at the last minute, and despite him beating the drones because he crashed the plane to do so, because he couldn't pull out of the maneuver that disrupted the planes, not only is he fired, but everybody in the company is fired. Oh, what?
I need to speak to HR because that is the most terrible way of handling layoffs.
Yeah, and
just say you're embezzling people. Just
right. And things are piling up for him because Carol screams at him when she mentions when he was like, "Mate, why are you doing a desk job?" She gets mad about that and saying, you know, I don't have to be a pilot. This never circles back. It never comes back, by the way.
I forgot that even happened.
Also his one of his coworkers said, "Hey man, you cost us all our jobs somehow. So we're gonna get you. I want you back." And even when he goes home, the local news, who apparently has nothing better to do than to report on this government test / contract sale, all his brothers call him out for being too reckless like their father. And after all of this, at least he has a moment to give a present to his nephew, the one he wrapped in newspaper. And I would love to point out at this point, there was absolutely no reason he couldn't have waited to wrap this present. Why the location he went to while he was wrapping the present was hours before this. He had hours of time to wrap this. Why did he wrap it in the car? It makes no sense.
Also, like when he took the plane out of the newspaper wrapping, it was not the same shape. it was definitely more square like, and then when he takes it out, it literally is just this model fighter jet, and there's like no angles to this newspaper wrapping. Also, I love how like none of the brothers actually have a name. They're just, you don't even know that they're brothers until he walks up into the kids' room. It's just like, "Hey, your uncle is here," and it's like, I thought this was just some random kid's birthday party that you just decided to go to, and it was like, let me just bring a present.
And he has like 4 brothers.
Right.
Too many. For a movie, guys. In real life, go ahead, have as many brothers as you want, but like not in a movie.
Honestly, there were also too many of them in the house. Like I haven't seen that many brothers since like Cheaper by the Dozen.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So there's this little heart to heart that they have. The scene ends as soon as it begins. Honestly, if you forget about it, it's totally fine because I feel like this movie also forgot about it. So as he's heading back towards the car, because somehow this party is just done, he gets snatched up by this glowing green energy. And in the earlier scene, we do see that Abin Sur had crash landed on Earth. He's in this bay. He sends the energy from his ring to go and find the next bearer. Honestly, this scene did upset me about Abin Sur like sending out the energy to send up for the next bearer, because every single time we cut back to him, it's that scene.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we get it, but like, what does it mean? Tell us, what does it mean to choose the next bearer?
He's been dying for like 24 hours.
It was like watching an anime, like, honestly. So as this glowing green energy takes Hal, it brings him all the way to the bay where he comes across the ship that Abin Sur is in.
So here's where we get our fourth opening to the movie, where Abin Sur tries to warn Hal about everything, about Parallax, and the threat he'll face. But most importantly, he gives him the Green Lantern ring and a very basic tutorial on how to use it. Hal, not really wanting any of this smoke, and calls his friend Mike for a ride as the government shows up to take the alien. Before anything interesting happens there, we cut back to Oa, the planet of the Green Lanterns. And we have a long scene with Sinestro
Oh
where
my god, yeah.
he's
You would
insisting
think it
like,
was Stanley Tucci.
right. He's giving and look, I want to say this. Mark Strong Sinestro is probably the best performance in this movie consistently. He really does understand the character, because Sinestro is saying like Parallax is out here killing our people and we're not doing anything about it. And he's trying to get to these Guardians like, look, I want to fight, but I'm not going to do it unless you sign off on it. And he eventually is able to push the Guardians to say, look, I'll go myself with a select few. If we die, that's fine, but you have to give me a shot. And here's the point where I'm like, why aren't you the main character of this movie? Because this is really compelling.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved every scene with Sinestro because it, again, the same thing. Like like you said, he really got the character. I felt very motivated to, like, every time he spoke, it was like, yeah, let's roll for war. And unfortunately, I feel like this movie should have spent more time on this than trying to focus on, well, I guess like Hal Jordan trying to learn how to rap a GIF while driving 80 miles per hour and trying to audition for Fast and the Furious, I don't know, Christmas edition or something. So, I don't know. But as we have that moment and we close out, we head on back to Earth where Dr. Hector Hammond, he is at home, just chilling. He gets a knock on his door, and there are two guys dressed in suits. Obviously, because this is a alien type movie, we're assuming that they're some sort of like government officials. They tell him that he needs to come with them. He thinks it's a joke. We immediately just cut to him being in a car with a bag over his head, being taken off. As he's brought to another location, unknown where this location is. It just looks like an old warehouse. But then when they guide him through, it turns out to be this like secret facility run by the government. And here is when we get to meet Angela Bassett. It is Amanda Waller.
Now, look, people, on paper, this casting absolutely slaps. Like,
facts.
Angela Bassett has the chops to play Amanda Waller properly.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, whoever writers were in the room for this final version, this is not Amanda Waller. Her ruthlessness, her brutality, her do anything for the sake of her greater good, it's not here. All we have here is a government liaison spouting exposition. She is too nice, she is too courteous, and there's just nothing. She absolutely does not give us anything. And again, Angela Bassett is incredible. She gave everything she could, but there is just no life in this Amanda Waller at all. This is the worst Amanda Waller to exist in the multiverse.
Not because of Angela Bassett. Angela Bassett is a we love Angela Bassett here. She's a freaking saint. But you're right. She needed more from this dialogue, more from this scene, and instead she was written as just basically like government official number 37.
Yeah.
It's weird. Speaking of the exposition, we learned that the government was able to collect the body of Abin Sur. So now Hector Hammond is responsible for basically doing I'm assuming the alien autopsy. They never really call it out, but he is doing the autopsy on Abin Sur's body. At the same time, we see Hal trying to get the lantern to work. There's a very lengthy kind of joke scenario because I think it's just because of 2000s, because of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, they just decided to like, let's just dial into this like comical takes on things that are like superhero fans know, but are gonna love the fact that they're like not just known. Like Spider-Man doing the fly, go web go, and not being able to do the actual hand signature. They basically recreated here with Hal as he is pledging allegiance to the lantern that has crash landed and gave him this ring. That is basically almost what he says in this thing.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of Spider-Man, another superhero movie this blatantly rips off. During Hector's autopsy of Abin Sur, he just accidentally touches a part of the alien that has a trace of Parallax's fear. I hate this because this could have happened to anybody. There's nothing special that he did or illegal that he did to warrant this, but he gets infected and he gets sweaty. He's at home at night transforming. His body is transforming, which is just such a blatant ripoff of 2002 Spider-Man, this exact sequence. And it was so clear they were trying to do a parallel of how like Green Goblin and Spider-Man transformed at the same time. Hector and Hal transform at the same time. But the problem is in Spider-Man, one chose to do this, so somebody chose it. One was an accident, and here it's kind of both an accident. Like, yes, Hal was chosen, but very lightly. And there's another big thing where I have to ask, why is Hal trying to do the oath at all? What reason does he have to do it?
He doesn't have a reason. He could literally have thrown this whole lantern in the ring into the back of his closet and called it a day. Like there is a mention, speaking of Spider-Man, of honor and responsibility, a line that Abin Sur tells him that like this is what it has. And there's this just running joke from Tom's character just being like, oh, responsibility. I guess responsibility must mean asshole on a different planet or something like that. And it's like, okay, one, rude, but also why does Hal want this responsibility? He is now on many occasions shown that he rather fly by the seat of his pants than be actually serious about anything. Like he does seem to want to push people to make sure that they're actually accepting what they truly want in life. Like how the dialogue between him and Carol when he's like, you don't want this desk job. It's aggressive, but like you could see like what he's trying to get to, but it's not the most ideal way to say it. So I agree. Like there's no reason for him to be like, I want to become a Green Lantern. I want to become like the purple green alien that did this, even though I have no idea what he is, what he can do to me, what does taking on this responsibility could do to my life, or even now just looking because of the fact they did the duality of it. If I touch the thing, will I get infected with some kind of alien virus that will lead to my death or this figuration in the near future? There's no reason for him to do it.
Yeah, and this kind of meandering things continues because as he does figure out the lantern oath and gets powered up, Carol just shows up and says, hey, actually that contract thing worked out. We're gonna be fine, actually. And it was like, why did that get resolved off screen? And they do some banter about the romance that is pretty much copy paste from any superhero romance you've ever seen. And this scene is so hilarious to me because as soon as Carol mentions fear, as soon as she mentions therapy, this man walks out of the bar and leaves her. She doesn't chase after him either. He just freaking leaves. As soon as he hears, men would rather leave the most hot girl they've ever met in their life than to think about therapy. Like it is true. Um, and he immediately gets jumped by his coworkers and he puts on a decent fight, but eventually he gets backed into a corner and accidentally uses his ring to punch them all with a big green fist. And the guy he punched through the wall, that brick wall, is dead.
Oh, it's dead.
He's 100% dead.
Yep. Yep. Adding that to the Green Lantern L count.
Oh, bringing it back.
So as this happens, Hal is freaking out. And then immediately he gets engulfed in the same green energy again. And then is teleported and transported to space. I'm assuming because he killed someone, he has to file a report with his superiors. So they were like, this is going to be an in-person HR meeting. So we hop on over, and it's treated like any kind of alien abduction movie where he's knocked out, he's unconscious. Somehow they took off his clothes, leaving him in just very white, tight underwear. And then he starts experiencing some electrical shocks that go through his body that then leads into him just getting his suit. And this is the suit that everyone has beef with because it was all CGI. It almost, looking at it and really trying to say, I was just like, yeah, it is a little weird. I don't know, maybe it's because we just been spoiled by like actual costume designers creating these suits nowadays. But like when you think about like this movie coming out after Batman Begins, and I also believe after Dark Knight, or even after I want to say after Iron Man.
Yep.
It's just shocking to see that like they decide to go the full CGI on a suit that's pretty simple to make, if I do say so myself. Like literally green bodysuit that you could buy at any Party City. You can either spray paint or stitch on the black lining and add the logo. You're good. And then add in the CGI elements afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, Wayne T. Knight gave, I believe that, and I'm sorry if I butchered the actor's name, but he was showing his sample John Stewart for Zack Snyder's Justice League. I believe that was him. And that suit looked great.
Yeah,
and
I remember that was a great suit.
Yeah, and that was completely practical. And I know we've come, to be fair, we have come far in 10 years in terms of suit technology, but I think we still could have gotten something decent back then. And I also like how painful the suit bonding process is because has it ever been cause pain to put on a Green Lantern suit?
No, and I also thought about just like from Fantastic Four, Johnny Storm is legit on fire every time he suits up. This man is okay.
Just, agreed, it hurts. So after he gets dressed in the most painful suit up sequence you've seen since Blue Beetle, yeah. I'm gonna give this movie 2 points of credit. All right. I give it 2 points of credit. He's talking to Tomare, who, looks like a fish. And well, I mean, okay, quick deduction. He has barely any reaction to a humanoid fish talking person. It's kind of just like, oh, you're a fish. Yeah. No, bro. No. You have to react bigger than that. But Tomare mentions that they have not bonded. This is the first time in their history where humans bonded with the ring. So that opens up some possibilities and, fun, unique challenges. And he also informs how they can fly. And a lot of superhero movies nowadays underestimate this scene, but Hal does enjoy flight. He enjoys having his powers. He has a good time. This is a scene that even in good superhero movies is all they skip. They skip that moment of pure joy when they really embrace what they can do for themselves and the world. And I will give them credit for having this before cutting to the real main character, Sinestro.
Yeah, we see that Sinestro is amongst the entire Green Lantern Corps here on Oa, giving his Braveheart speech, rallying the troops, telling them that we are about to head into war to defeat Parallax because he has taken not only members of our Corps, but he's also taken planets and the lives of many people, the lives that we were hired to defend. And there is at one moment, there's a snide comic that he makes about Albin Sur's ring going to a new person. It's not really caught by Hal, but it is caught by basically every single Green Lantern Corps member. So he's not really sure what's really going on, but people decide, all right, we're going to head on to war, but Hal's not ready yet. This is another point of contention for a lot of people who have watched this movie, is Hal's training. So we get introduced now to Kilowog, and I gotta say, love Michael Clark Duncan that they decided to choose him for the voice. I hate the design of Kilowog in this.
Where's your neck, bro? Where's your neck?
Right. Also, Kilowog always had like these like huge teeth. Like in this movie, he's more like a pig versus the boar that I wanted to see from him. Like, so I was a little upset that they kind of just made him more of a character of like, oh, because you look like a pig, obviously you stink. Obviously, you don't really know what you're doing. And it's only through like light levels of training that Hal experiences that like a Green Lantern has to go through a lot, such as being able to pull himself away from the gravitational pull of a sun, learning to use his constructs in a way that allows him to, one, make them sturdy, but two, to defend himself when he might be taken advantage of at any point. And he does get one win. One win amongst, I think, 4 beatdowns that Kilowog provides. But upon that win, he does get a bit of a big head, which is completely addressed by, once again, the main character of our film here, Sinestro, who's like, okay, cool, you got one, but let's see how you could continue on. And now it's more of a battle between alien versus human, with everyone believing, once again, that humans can't really do anything and this should not get the Green Lantern ring at all.
Yeah, and this is a fine scene, I would say. You know, Sinestro beats him down so much, and just embarrasses him in front of, well, I guess just 2 people, not really a crowd, which would have been nice to parallel if, again, he embarrasses himself in front of a crowd instead of just like 2 people.
Right.
And Hal gives up right here. He just gives up, takes off the ring, which you think would disqualify him instantly for this, but no, it's good. It's fine. So back with Hector, who I guess is the villain. Hector starts gaining the ability to read thoughts, and when he hears, while he's teaching a class, one of his students calls him a loser, which I mean is like, I don't even, there's multiple times where people call Hector a loser in this movie, and to this point in the movie, later on he does some stuff, but to this point in the movie, I don't really get why. He's just a smart guy, it seems, that, you know, just has a steady career and
he seems to really enjoy teaching.
Yeah.
Like, and his class seems to be really engaged too.
Yeah, it's like the things you notice when you grow up. You're like, actually, it seems like he's got a pension. He's got a huge apartment. Like, I don't really see before this point why he's so bitter. And it gets even worse when he meets his dad, where his dad is like, yeah, I let you see that alien because of nepotism. And for some reason, there's a weird thing where Hector is mad that his dad gave him an advantage, but also mad that his dad thinks he's a loser. And I'm like, what? You have to pick a lane with these characters. Does his dad think he's a loser and he was like, this what you needed, son? Or does his dad thinks he's weird and that,
or even respects him as a scientist?
Right. That would have been more appropriate. It's like, yeah, you can do your weird alien thing you're always talking about.
Yeah.
Like the alignment was just wild. And then we hard cut to the Lanterns fighting Parallax. Sinestro pulls up with his Corps. They're fighting Parallax, and it instantly goes bad. But the crazy thing about the scene, that's a flashback. In the middle of the scene, it cuts to voiceover narration of Sinestro narrating that this has already happened
Oh
in the
yeah.
past. Would you do this? Why?
Escape
What?
Sinestro.
What?
Oh my gosh, what is time?
And the cherry on the top of the cake on this confusing scene is that the Guardians reveal that this is where the Guardians tell Sinestro that Parallax was once a Green Lantern who got corrupted by the power of fear and became what they are now. He is getting all the info on this huge betrayal of the main character, of the main villain, and Hal is
Mm.
nowhere to be seen. Hal never learned, to my knowledge, Hal never learns this, that he was a corrupted Green Lantern that gave in to fear. So why is this being told to Sinestro? If he was
'Cause
the
he's the
main
main
character,
character.
right? That's right. I forgot. All the stuff with Hal is side character stuff. So as Sinestro convinces the Corps to make a yellow ring, we cut back to just a party that was never set up or introduced and has as many black jazz musicians as La La Land.
What? Yeah. Thankfully, he does get credited in the movie though. Like, not said in the actual film. It's just in the end credits. that's what we get. Anyway, at this party, this is now where we see every single character in our film that resides on Earth coming together. Hector and Hal and Carol. Apparently, they all have some kind of connection. So while Hal and Carol continue to work along the same path, it seems as if Hector had known them from when they were younger, or more so just maybe like a couple of years back. And he does seem to kind of like pine after Carol because he's kind of like talking with her in this kind of like, hey, I'm trying to show you that I'm cool by like tipping my head to the side kind of thing whenever I make a comment. But during their time of like talking together, he gets a little drunk and starts mentioning stuff about the alien, which he was told by Dr. Amanda Waller not to reveal, and also by his father not to reveal because it is supposed to be top secret. And his father overhears it, goes over to try to stop him. And when he does so, he's like, all right, I'm done with this party for the evening. His father, I mean, I don't know why his father just decided to leave after seeing his son
In a
starting to spill
helicopter.
government. Yeah. Also, why was the helicopter in the middle of the party? Like,
what? That's not safe, guys.
and the reason why it's not safe is not because of any reason you could think of. It's because Hector Hammond uses his psychic abilities, his newfound psychic abilities, to break off one of the spouts from the beer dispensers to knock it into the rear propeller of the helicopter, causing the whole thing to frantically careen all around everyone. I am surprised that no one died the way that it was basically hitting the ground on every move.
I mean, we're gonna get into mass death later. Trust me, we will. But here is where, kind of out of nowhere, because we remember this is a Green Lantern movie.
Not starring Sinestro though.
No, that's a Yellow Lantern. Hal comes in and saves the day, and one of the biggest knocks against this movie is that the constructs are kind of lame. And I want to 1,000% agree, and also add that they're actually really dangerous because early in the movie, when Hal was training with Sinestro, he uses a machine gun turret, which to his knowledge would kill Sinestro. I mean, he's murdered before, but so I guess it lines in his character. Here, to save the helicopter, he creates a racetrack, which was foreshadowed when he went to his nephew's room and saw a racetrack, like a Hot Wheels racetrack. But the way that the helicopter like goes around and everything, and it's like, I know you're trying to slow its momentum down, but you know what Hot Wheels racetracks typically do when they get to the bottom? Go really freaking fast, bro. They're definitely gonna have whiplash and die. And as further proof, the copter almost hits Carol anyway. So, wow, wow, wow. To quote pitch meeting on that one. And the movie, even as Hector further morphs into a more hideous form, Mike comes in. Hal's best friend Mike comes in and even criticizes the decision to
Wait,
use
is
the
this friend?
racetrack.
Wait, sorry, is this friend named Mike or Tom? I was calling him Tom.
It probably is Tom. I look, the director's cut, that 10 minutes it's probably Tom.
I also wouldn't be surprised if in the director's cut his full name isn't like Tom Mike or Mike Tom or something.
Yeah. I mean, his role in the movie is right now because after insisting on seeing the Green Lantern suit in person for absolutely no reason, and I want to emphasize for absolutely no reason, he's like, well, you're in the suit. Why don't you go get the girl?
It was never even really specified that like Hal wanted to be with Carol. Like they have spent the entire film being at each other's throats because of things. Like, yes, they had that like one moment in the bar, but again, he left when he was told that he should go and do therapy, which is a normal thing to tell someone. So Hal in the suit flies over. He tries to put on his best deepened voice so that he isn't picked up on by Carol. But the more that Carol kind of looks at him and is talking with him and getting real close to him, he's thinking that they're going to embrace and kiss and, you know, do the thing where it's like the hero does get the girl. She immediately pulls back because she recognizes that it's Hal immediately. And then he just decides, well, might as well just reveal it all because, again, they grew up together. And he just basically spends the rest of this movie with kind of the rest of this scene with kind of a dopey kind of look on his face. It was like, you got me. Oh, I guess the mask didn't really work like they told me it was going to work on Oa.
Yeah, I mean, okay, it is legitimately one of the best line of the movie is, "Do you think I wouldn't recognize you because I can't see your cheekbones?" That's good. That's
Oh,
good.
that's
I'll give
solid.
you
That
that.
is solid. Yeah.
Um,
Also, the fact that she was like, I also have seen you naked. And I was like, that's also fair, given the fact that basically the suit is on his naked body, just
yeah,
like unnecessarily tight for CGI.
right. So here's where they have a heart to heart where he's saying like, "Yeah, I just got all these awesome powers that I've used literally one time, and I think I'm gonna quit actually." And this conversation again is baffling because he keeps saying like, "Yeah, don't you know I always mess up?" Bro, whatever you did in the plane scored a contract and led to that fancy party. You're obviously a successful pilot. You're obviously playing Uno with women every other day. You got a Green Lantern ring and alien powers that you've had for a day, and you're not the best at them? Sure. But to say you keep messing up is absolutely wild. It's like if
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man 2, he was like, I keep making money. That doesn't track to anything we've seen, bro. That this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This conversation doesn't make any sense. But
You leave
speaking of,
Spider-Man alone about not making money. Okay, that was
I,
too close.
I feel it. I feel it. But speaking of things that don't make sense, we cut back to Hector, who has now morphed really out of control, and his dad is like, "Please, son, I want to get you some help." Not ironically, not he's actually legitimately wants his son to get some help. And
Mm,
for some reason, Hector, who now has the ability to read thoughts by touch, even though he could just read thoughts normally,
yeah.
um, touches Amanda Waller and she has a flashback of some traumatic event in her past that is flashing by so quickly. I cannot even speculate what happened in that flashback. I don't know what tragedy is in her past from that.
That's her comic origin. So they wanted to remind us, they're like, yo, this is actually Amanda Waller by presenting that she once had a loving family that was all experienced traumatic deaths. And she decided to join the government in order to rectify the laws that would allow for these things to happen. So we basically get a full flashback of Amanda Waller's comic book origin story just to remind us that Angela Bassett is Amanda Waller.
Great. Great, because she becomes a vital part of the movie for the next 5 minutes.
So when he does this, seeing her memories, this is when they decide that he needs to be incapacitated. So they do give him some kind of injection to knock him out because they do realize, they tell him that upon further inspection of the alien body, they found that there were actually two beings in that body, and they believe that he was infected by one. So they try to place him on the quarantine. Meanwhile, Hal just heads back to the location where he found Abin Sur, and just like contemplates Tomar Ray's words. I honestly feel like they just introduced Tomar Ray in this film just to provide some exposition and like the voice of reason for him or something, like his like Jiminy Cricket, which was weird. He just gets up and leave, but then we just hop back over to Hector, who's now in restraints, and he's just like, all right, I'm going to use my telekinetic abilities to break out of everything here. And then somehow hard cut to not only him, like just like using his abilities to just like float everyone out and press them against surfaces to try to crush their bodies. But then Hal Jordan as Green Lantern just arrives. No reason for him to know exactly this is where the facility was. No reason to know that Hammond was the one that was infected by the Parallax or anything. He, again, at this point, he doesn't really have an understanding of who Parallax is, except for the fact that the Green Lanterns went to go handle it on a planet far, far away a long, long time ago.
Yeah, this is, and it also like Hector broke out, but they weren't like threatening to kill him. They weren't threatening to dissect him. They were just like, yo, we want to help you. But anyway, there is literally maybe one power exchange between Hector and Hal before they knock themselves out and end up on the floor. Like the battle is extremely short, and Hector lamenting the fact that he's such a failure, which again, I don't see, doesn't track at all for his character, successful career. And I think they try to make it about his appearance, but yes, that's your appearance now. But prior to that, you're just a normal dude, bro. You lacked a little riz, but, and you were sniffing people, which was weird, but
he was.
That was it. But as he's lamenting how much of a failure he is, he burns his father to death. Also in the middle of this, Amanda Waller falls, but Green Lantern saves her, puts her on a wave, and she leaves the movie because that's it. That's it for Amanda Waller for this movie.
I did find out kind of weird after watching Wakanda Forever, though. That was just like this Angela Bassett just exit films in water. Like I
that's
need to take a look back.
We're gonna go through we're gonna do a month of Angela Bassett and see.
I will happily do that.
Yeah. Get a taste out of this. So how to fight back touches the ring to Hector's head, which for some reason he thought would work. And because he does this, Parallax is alerted to Earth, and Parallax says, I'll come to Earth and kill everybody.
So yeah, this is a powerful lesson. Don't touch people.
Yeah, honestly. And right after this, we cut back to Hal, who apparently now with the ring touch has learned everything about Parallax and everything. And this conversation is, they're like, why are you giving up, Hal? And he's like, well, Green Lanterns are supposed to be fearless. And then Carol asks, but why? I get it, but why? Why are you giving up? Because I'm afraid.
I could spend the next 3,000 hours dragging this entire dialogue. But I will just completely say, thank you, movie, for giving me the definitions and the antonyms and the synonyms of fearless and afraid, and try to turn it into a poignant speech about why a hero couldn't measure up to the task, followed by the inspiration they will get from their friend telling them to just get ready for the big fight, because even though he's afraid, he should embody the thing that his father, a thing that we've never come across, that his father might have also been afraid, but what he was using to get through every day was courage. And at this point, I was just like, are y'all just trying to throw in every single color of the Lantern Corps in here and the meaning behind the colors to try to get us to be like, yeah, blue, purple, and it doesn't work. It's not a, this is not strong dialogue, especially because the friend Tom or Mike, it is totally absent from it the entire time.
This is again where the movie is so confused at what it's trying to teach us because being very generous, I think the movie was supposed to say that when Hal watched his father die in that explosion that is only in the director's cut, um, he saw a man that even in the face of death, that man was smiling right before he died. So maybe in his head, Hal was supposed to be like, my dad was fearless. And then throughout the movie, we'd see him do all these crazy, risky things, insisting he was fearless and denying that fear. Maybe that could have been the track, and that could have been interesting.
Oh.
But the problem is, he is clearly afraid. He clearly states he's afraid multiple times before this. And we are unable to determine if he's reckless and truly like suppressing the fear deep down, or if he's fearful but does reckless things sometime. I can't tell you which one he is because the movie never decided, making his arc impossible to track. It's not possible. You can see where it ends. The ending arc is very clear, but how he got here, I don't know. I want to tell you, I really do, but I can't because this movie has made it impossible. And it's time, and we also get here. Finally, Sinestro and Hal see each other after like an hour of movie time.
Yeah, because I did track because I was just like, I did remember because I did see this in the theaters. I did remember that the movie was supposed to end soon. And we now have like 30 minutes of film left, including credits. So this was surprising that we had to wait this long for this reconnection for them.
Yeah. And Hal just argues to the Green Lantern Guardians, hey, I know you're about to, because Sinestro actually is fighting for Earth. They're like, oh, we're actually gonna let Parallax just roll over Earth while we prepare the Fear Ring. And Sinestro's kind of conflicted, but he's like, all right, if that's what we have to do to save the universe, I'll go with you guys. And Hal rolls in and says, please get Earth a shot. And they're like, no. So Hal's like, I guess I'm gonna go back to Earth and do it myself. And they're like, okay. So if you're keeping score at home, there is no reason for him to go because nothing changes as a result of him going at all. Like nothing in the movie is different. If he had just stayed on
see
Earth,
the Yellow Lantern ring.
that's it. And guess what? When he comes back, Carol's been kidnapped. They don't show how that happened.
Okay, I thought it was. I was hoping it was in the director's cut because that was my biggest question. It was just like, did Tom Mike just leave her, and did he try to fight back? Where is he? Did he lose his life against Parallax or Hector? Because she's just floating in air with somehow he was able to get more of the yellow energy or infection that was inside Abin Sur to try to inject her to turn her into like him. And as Hal is trying to fight him and telling him, don't do that, like you're gonna like think better, he's just like, oh, are you only saying this because if she looked like me, you wouldn't love her anymore? And then
I mean,
I remember seeing
I gotta be honest, dude. The way you are before you were good. Currently, it's not, something is going wrong with you. Like right now, clearly, like you're continually morphing. So honestly, I think he'd be in his rights to be like, let me think about it. Like something is like, this is not a good argument. I know what they're trying to do. I think what they're trying to do is be like, if you're not conventionally attractive, which I mean, in this movie is ridiculous. Everybody looks fine. That you don't get attention from women, which is a real incel like message to put in your movie. But again, the problem with this plot line is prior to this, no one commented on his looks. Because you can argue it's all in his head. That's fine. But not a single person rejected him for being ugly. or unattractive. He was always rejected in his mind for being a loser. So why are you
Yeah,
introducing this plot where he cares about appearance? He doesn't. He never has until this
never
point.
has. It's weird. It's weird. But Hal tries to convince him. He was like, "But you can be like me, uh, through the power of Dr. Zismore." No, not Dr. Zismore, but rather, he offers his Green Lantern ring and says that I can give you the power that I have. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that Green Lantern rings can't change your appearance except just giving you bad CGI suits. But he accepts it. And as he takes on the energy, he is able to stand up from his chair or float from his chair, which I was thinking is like, couldn't he have just done that with his telekinetic abilities already? But he is able to create a blast of energy from the ring, which he then tries to send towards Hal, but it stops suddenly, and he tells him like, "Ha, tricked you. You actually have to be chosen." And he takes back the ring. The ring also sends the blast back to Hector, flying him back. And because he's knocked out a little bit, it causes Carol to fall because it breaks the psychic hold that's on her. Hal catches her, just doesn't even use the ring. He just actually just runs over and catches her as she's falling. The serum cracks on the floor. And then all of a sudden, Parallax just shows up and kills Hector.
Yep, that's it. He's gone. Like all that.
Yeah.
Yep, he's gone.
All that build up.
So Carol gets a moment where while Hal is struggling with Parallax, why Parallax doesn't kill her, I truly don't understand. He can clearly kill multiple people at the same time, and Hal at that very moment was depowered. It shouldn't. Anyway, so she uses a jet to distract Parallax so Hal can regain his ring. Parallax goes outside of the building to chase Hal and kills a lot of people. A lot of people die just casually. Just a lot of, they imply that school kids on a bus probably didn't make it, which is one of the darkest things I've seen in a live action DC movie. And I've watched Joker multiple times. And this is also where you realize that his friend Tom Mike, he is not here. He's not in the climax. What superhero movie have you watched where their best friend or the goofy sidekick is just
even the man in the
shunted?
chair?
Yeah, the man in chair is just shunted out of the movie that early? Like, what? Even Ned goes the distance in most Spider-Man movies. Like, what is going on here? But after a lot of people die, Hal is able to push Parallax into space by saying the oath, where now he can enact his master plan for the greatest battle in superhero history, or whatever.
Yeah, so so remember that time when Hal learned about the gravitational pull of bodily planets and all of that? So he decides basically to steal the end sequence of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie and bring Parallax as close to the sun as possible. The sun starts pulling on Parallax every single time that Parallax tries to use his energy. It ends up getting absorbed or brought back by the sun due to gravity. I do not think that's how energy works.
No.
Yeah, I'm no rocket scientist, but I feel like that's a no. Hal is able to create two fighter jets as constructs to use them to keep pulling him away from the gravitational pull of the sun. And the more that Hal is able to keep this fight going, we do see that he uses the same punch that he used when he killed the guy by sending him through the brick wall to send Parallax into the sun. I think this is probably the time when they're trying to show that like Hal did have enough willpower, because I think this is it was really subtle, and I wish they actually kind of dived into it a little bit more. But it seemed as if back when he was saving the party, when he created the racetrack, but then saw that Carol was in danger, so tried to create a shield over her, he couldn't create two constructs at the same time. But here it is that he did. And it would have been nice if they actually said that. Instead, we do see, though, that like because of this overuse of energy, he falls unconscious. He starts careening towards the sun, and by a miracle, well, even though there's an entire Green Lantern Corps, he is saved by the three people that we got a chance to see the most work with, Sinestro, Kilowog, and Tomar, who basically just construct belts and drag him back away from the gravitational pull of the sun.
Which is crazy feats for this guy to defeat like the head honcho villain of the universe first day
Right.
out. Kilowagi's
First
like, don't I know how to train him? Bro, 5 seconds. You trained him for 5 seconds.
It's
Um,
like Goku has trained for longer and he struggled against some godlike deities.
right. There's really nothing else that happens in this movie of note. Greenland House says, "I'll go find more evil someday," and then then Sinestro finds it, puts on the fear ring. That's it. Nothing else. There's no other resolutions with any of the other characters. Amanda Waller doesn't come back. Mike Tom doesn't come back. This is over. The movie's over now.
All right, so that wraps up 2011's Green Lantern. What are you constructing with your power of will for this movie? Is this movie are you making a cape or are you making a cap?
I know it sounds like this is the best movie we've seen on the podcast, bar none. But this is actually going to be a cap. And it's not for the reasons you expect when you think about this movie. It's not because of the bad CGI. It's not because of the lame fight scenes, though those things help. It's just the simple fact that the main character of this movie is pushed along a track and really has no control, fate, or sway in the plot in any significant way. Scenes roll into each other without any rhyme or reason, and I haven't watched the director's cut. I can't say they cut out footage that made it make sense. This movie is just a mess, and there's really not much else to say. um, like there, no. There's nothing else I can really say about it. It's just a mess. What about you?
Oh yeah, this is a certified cap for me, even after all this time. I do remember when Ryan Reynolds kind of did the rewatch. He was like, it's not that bad. And like, in some cases I would agree with him. Like, if your movie is supposed to be about how Sinestro is the most well-written, compelling character, and yes, it's not that bad. But everything else is just wow. Like the pacing seems so off. Like by the time that you're in the last like 45 minutes of the film, which is basically half the film, it just feels like you're just powering through on a lot of stuff. And it happens all super fast. The character motivations are basically absent. Like I have no idea what purpose Tom was supposed to serve, or Tom Mike
Oh,
rather.
right.
Is he a man in the chair? He was in the chair for like 5 seconds. And also, why was he not upset about losing his job? Also, when Hal did the thing, like there's no, like, you have this whole like story that's crafted about how Hal and Carol knew each other, and how even there's at some point where Hector had fallen in love with Carol since the first time he met her, even though it's never told when that was. But Tom Mike is just basically like here. Like he just, we don't know when he was hired. Why is it that he's friends with Hal, even though he spends most of his time like saying that, like, responsible, dude, you're an asshole. And it's like, okay, cool. Like I have friends that joke around like that, but like it also seems like he was very serious about that. Like it's not him calling out Hal for something wrong that he's doing, knowing that he could do better. It just seems like he just genuinely hates this dude. Yeah, Hector's whole motivation for destroying the world is he's just not getting any. It felt like a random pivot towards the second half of the film when, as you mentioned, like he is created out to be this character that does have a lot together for him. And I will just say too, the main reason why this is a cap for me is in the superhero movie that you have a moment to talk about how the hero is stepping up to the challenge when he feels that he has lost the faith within himself. And the dialogue is literally, I'm not fearless, and being responded with, well, why aren't you? It's not like it's a state of mind. There's action. So I agree, if it was like more scenes in which they showed like why he felt he was afraid, it would have made more sense, because he kept saying it, and so I believed him, but it never really came across that way. He failed upwards every single time. and calling it fail is a stretch. But between watching the director's cut and just the 13 years that have passed since this film has come out, have you found anything that could explain, well, why is it that Tom Mike was even in this film?
Yes, on this edition of Loose Threads, this is a rare overlap where the Loose Threads is my Arte alteration. Because
Mm.
I did the research for Loose Threads after writing down my Arte alteration, and I was shocked that they were one and the same. So, the original version of this movie did not have Hal Jordan. When Warner
What?
Brothers first greenlit this movie, it was going to be called Green Lantern Birth of a Hero. It was greenlit in 2007. And this movie would have starred actor Corey Reynolds. He's mainly
Mm.
known for Closer fame,
Hmm.
as John Stewart. And he was also writing it. And it was going to be a trilogy. And the idea was they would introduce John Stewart first, and then Hal would be introduced in the second movie as a way to expand the universe. So they were going to build it
Oh.
off of John Stewart, which solves pretty much all of the problems of this movie. So that would be my main arte alteration. Um, because I think, in movie history, we have times where the second versions of characters are used because they're just the more compelling versions. For example,
Hmm.
Scott Lang as Ant-Man, the thief who can shrink and get into everything, is just more interesting than another scientist in the current Marvel structure. So
Hmm.
here, this is a fantastic example of, Hal Jordan is a great hero, and I'm not denying he's iconic. But if you want a Green Lantern story that, pun intended, shines, you go to John Stewart, someone who had to overcome fear as a soldier. And in certain versions of the story, he's gone back to a place where being put in those situations has given him PTSD. And he
Mm.
has a legitimate reason that is right in front of us why he struggles with fear but still does it anyway. We already see that in his previous life, and it makes sense for him to take on a new life where he gets to do that once more on a larger scale. So, unfortunately, the script was at the finish line. Warner Brothers liked it, and then they tossed it out. And they said, Greg Berlanti, Mark Guggenheim, Michael Green, get on here and write a brand new script while
Um,
they were tossing out the other script. So that's mainly why all these cooks in the kitchen, from my understanding, they didn't take anything from Corey Reynolds' version of Green Lantern. But what I can say is that during the development process, some names considered for Green Lantern, and they're going to get less likely as I say them: Bradley Cooper,
okay. I can see
Justin
that.
Timberlake,
Ooh.
Jared Leto, and Jack
Ugh.
Black.
Uh, I'm so glad that Jack Black chose Kung Fu Panda over this.
And to conclude, Loose Threads, the original trailer to this movie was so poorly received that they dropped the marketing campaign and promoted the 2011 Green Lantern movie instead.
Damn. So this was just a crapshoot from the very beginning.
Yep, they were like, you know what? The animated movie's pretty decent, right? We could push forward with that because this one,
Mm,
220 box office on a $200 million budget. So huge, huge, huge bomb.
mm.
Um, does any of this bomb have any roots in the comics besides the name Green Lantern?
um, I will say probably about 5 minutes of this film, maybe even less. So yes, there is obviously this is an origin story of an iconic character, Hal Jordan's version of the Green Lantern. So I'm going to be real quick with this because this movie is just like basically just like, hey, these are all characters that you could play around with. Just throw them into the sandbox and create something. This is basically how it felt like this movie was being treated based off the history of Green Lantern, because it's not like even pulling from like the origin story of Hal Jordan as much. Mainly because when Hal Jordan was first introduced in comics, that was back in 1959. His origin story is featured in Showcase number 22, created by John Broome and Gil Kane. And in that story is literally called SOS Green Lantern. It's Hal meeting Abin Sur when Abin Sur crash lands on Earth. He's given the ring. To be honest, the explanation about how the ring works and what Hal needs to do to get it to work is way longer in the comics than it is in this movie. I'm wondering why that was the case, but I mean, choices were made, and he just immediately just jumps into being a superhero. Knows how to use the ring almost immediately, and he never actually has to experience the same level of work that he had to do in this movie. Like, there's no Hector Hammond at all in his origin story. In fact, Hector Hammond doesn't get introduced into comics until 2 years later. Once again, created by the same creators in Green Lantern #5. And in that story, he's written as a petty criminal who actually comes across a meteorite that gives him this this look and his abilities. And it's said to be the same meteorite that is given to that is used to give Gorilla Grodd his like super intelligence as well.
Okay. Stay away from that meteorite, I guess.
Yeah, just don't touch things that fall from the sky, people. And don't let
Meteor
people
Man
touch your
learned
face.
that.
Oh, yeah. And I think the other big thing, I couldn't really find anything about Tom Mike. But we also know for Carol, she was also introduced in this showcase #22. I would say she's probably the most like her character in this film because she does end up running Ferris Air. And it is kind of an origin story for her about like how she's learning to become the CEO and take the reins. And even in that point, at the end of it's part now of this compendium that gets put together to reintroduce Green Lantern later on for fans. But in that original story, she decides that she doesn't want a relationship with Hal because she wants to focus on her career. And she's like, I need at least like 2 years. And I was like, that's a very specific amount of time, but totally get it. If it's like fiscal years and all that, you know, you want to prove your merit and whatnot, totally fine. And then the other person that does come into play, or being or thing that comes into play, is Parallax.
Not Tom Mike.
Yeah, again, I cannot find anything on it. At a later point, I'll try to see if I can find something. But Parallax is nothing like he is in the movie. In the movie, they kind of created him as like a Galactus kind of figure in a way that just doesn't eat planets, but just eats people's fears and just leaves their carcasses behind, which gives me that's a whole other conversation for another thing. Cause I did not know that by taking the fear out your body, I would just be left as a husk. That's new. But Parallax has two origins in comics. One is just the name, and it's the supervillain name that Hal Jordan adopts when his stories were being written by Darryl Banks and Ron Mars, that turned him into the Green Lantern that was killing other Green Lanterns and decided to take their rings so that he could compete with J-Lo for the number of rings collected in one period of time.
Ooh.
And then in 2004 is when we get Green Lantern Rebirth. This is when Jeff Johns, he basically revolutionizes DC for quite some time in the early 2000s to now, would work with Ethan Van Sciver to turn Parallax into the entity that is power, that's the embodiment of fear and is the power source of the Yellow Lantern rings. And this was all just to retcon it so that Hal wasn't a person a Green Lantern that turned evil. So they were trying to give back Hal the ring, the Green Lantern ring, and by showing that he didn't just turn evil, he actually was possessed by this being, very similarly to what we saw in the Green Lantern Beware My Power Tomorrowverse film. So that's like a pretty new introduction to kind of like who Parallax is. Again, nothing like we saw in the film. A lot of these characters have very different origin stories and different things that play out for them. Hal never even had to compete against such a big threat until much later on, like really in the latter 2000s is when he's like competing against Parallax and other cosmic entities like that. For the most part, all of his adventures have been scientists who wants to use rocket and weapons technology to take over the world. And he's just realizing they all have some kind of connection to Ferris Air.
Oh, well, it's nice when your villains have a theme.
Yeah. So that's really the story of how it's a pretty short story. It's not as compelling as we've talked about for like Jon Stewart. But the crazy thing about Showcase number 22 is that it's often seen as like the beginning of this new era of DC Comics. Because with the first set of comics to come out back in the 30s and 40s as well. So we did have a Green Lantern back then. This was Alan Scott. We also had a Flash that wasn't Barry Allen. It was Jay Garrick. Superman was around. Batman was around. Still Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne, respectively. But eventually, as their stories would progress, they were written originally during times of war. So it was easy to draft these stories because not that many, I would just assume not that many people were just paying attention because it's like we're dealing with a whole world war. So the stories can be pretty simplistic. A lot of it was just crime stuff, thriller stuff, kind of little tidbits of like just maybe magic or anything like that. But then at the direction of the new head of DC at that time, they decided to bring forth the Silver Age comics. And instead of it being, let's reboot the stories of like Alan Scott and Jay Garrick, let's create new characters under the moniker of these older characters and involve some sci-fi element to them. So Green Lantern was the second one. Flash would be considered the first character to be reintroduced into the world of DC under this like more sci-fi element. And then Green Lantern will be introduced into this whole concept of like space and like basically interstellar travel, and this larger sense of there's a world and civilizations that are out there that isn't our own. So they got really into that idea. We actually wouldn't even really meet this whole sense of this whole conceptualized idea of the Green Lantern Corps until much later. I would actually say that Jeff Johns is more so responsible for this like creation of like what it actually looks like, because most of the stories that do get told about the Green Lantern Corps is just like, hey, there's another one out there. Like when John Broome and Gil Kane started taking the reins of writing Green Lantern after the success from Showcase number 22, they started introducing characters like Tomar Ray. And then eventually we'll get like Sinestro and Kilowog, who will be introduced, showing that like the Green Lanterns aren't just Hal Jordan. It's this much larger world. And it helped because even by the time when comic sales were declining, because everybody was just like, we're kind of tired of putting our heroes through these like crime, horror, and romance stories. Now it's like, cool, there's like a world out there that we don't really know about, a space that we don't really know about that these heroes are venturing into. And it probably also helped that, like, given at this time in the 50s to the 60s, everything was about space travel. So they're like, what is out there? What wonders can we see? And it gave these comic book creators a chance to just create a world and characters and beings that like people probably just fantasize what these aliens will look like. And now they're seeing it's like, okay, here are some things of what to keep in mind for when you do see an alien. So with Green Lantern, he does revolutionize the idea of comics, and I would say the world of comics. And I'm assuming that maybe this is something they were trying to do with this Ryan Reynolds movie as well, because looking at the timeline of what everything happened specifically about DC, we do have Dark Knight that comes out, I think, about 2007 or so. 2008. By that time, DC had not had any other real movies going on. There was Batman Begins, but prior to that, it was Catwoman, which was, a failure. Prior to that, Steel, again, a failure. So now you have the only character in superhero storytelling from the DC side is someone who is involved directly in this crime and horror, that element that the comics from the past they felt where people were moving away from. And it's possible the same thing was happening here, where it's like you see other people, other organizations are building out these like sci-fi stories. The year 2000 kind of like changed everything of what we understood about technology. So now that we had all this new technology to mess around with, they were like, all right, let's probably experiment again with the sci-fi element. And that's why we probably got this version of Green Lantern to be focused in on space travel, to be focused in on cool looking ships, alien life forms, larger than life, devastating entities, because it was trying to do what this comic did and bring people back into the superhero storytelling. And that's my TED talk on,
Yeah.
on comics and why I think Green Lantern tried to do something more, but unfortunately, we didn't have the willpower to stick around to recognize its efforts. Even if I might just be putting in 10 on 1. So Ryan Reynolds, if you agree with this or would like to agree with it, please let us know. Give us a call.
Step out of your pool of cash from Wolverine and Deadpool for a second, and give us a shout.
All right. So I mean, before we close, I have to always make sure that given the fact that we talked about the Green Lantern, I gotta ask, who's still your top Green Lantern choice in this moment?
Oh, to play?
Yeah.
Oh, it's an easy layup. I mean, it's an unfair, but I mean, come on, let's just Michael B. Jordan. Go ahead, be Green Lantern. All right, go over there, do a Green Lantern real quick. He's played a soldier multiple times. He has the presence. He knows he understands a good comic book movie and a not so good one. So just let him cook. Just let him cook his Green Lantern. And alternatively, Aldous Hodge. We can forget you were Hawkman. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
I don't even remember. You just go do it. Not the Rock. Not the Rock.
Oh, not the Rock. Not the Rock. We can't bring him there. Any DC movies ever.
Not Jon Stewart. Not Jon Stewart.
Well, my choice would have been Aldous Hodge, and I do like Michael B. Jordan. I have been thinking about though for Kilowog. And I am forgetting his name right now off the tip of my tongue, but it is. Have you ever seen the show Sweet Tooth?
Yes.
The guy who plays Tommy Jeopard, Big Man. I would love for him to have a shot as Kilowog.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, I will put it in the show notes. This is my official fan casting of that character, because as we get closer to 2025, we do know that DC is going to go through a major revolution on the storytelling that's there. We already know that at the end of 2024, we're already going to get Creature Commandos, and they're already casted Guy Gardner, as will be reprising his Green Lantern, will be Nathan Fillion. So he's no longer Hal Jordan. So that's going to be a shocking twist for everybody, but I'm excited to see what he's going to do. But we do know that they are creating that Green Lantern series. It has been officially greenlit. So I'm looking forward to whoever they cast in that television series. And I'm hoping that does well. And it even matches up with the Corey Reynolds version that you were talking about, because I do know they were trying to treat it as more of a buddy cop, and it would make so much sense if they were able to expand that story out.
Yeah. You pitch space cops. Let's see some space cop stuff. For once. Let's see it.
Yes. If we can do Starship Troopers, we can do Space Cops Green Lantern style. Okay, people. All right. So that wraps up our episode. We have reached our final stop here on the Ryan and Hugh road trip. Thank you all so much for joining us for this Caper Cap edition, as we got a chance to really learn and see what these characters were like as they grew through time, and especially these actors, because bringing to life what was Deadpool and Wolverine took a lot of work. It took almost our entire superhero movie watching experience to see those characters come to life on the big screen. So very happy that they were able to do that after this arduous journey that they had to go through. We are definitely going to be bringing some more content to you soon. Just keep an eye out for our social medias for updates on episodes that you can find across Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and many other platforms. If you like what you heard, be sure to support us with a one-time gift on Buy Me a Coffee or monthly on Patreon. Take care of yourselves, and remember that once again, don't let people touch your face. Apparently, they can find out everything about you, like they're a scammer trying to find out your I don't know, like you just get more insecurity for your face, really, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and if you are trying to win over your romantic interest you've had your entire life, don't start by sniffing them. Just that's the end right there. Just don't start with that. That's just please don't do that. Respect
This thing
personal
is like,
space is
yeah,
our
the rules
moral.
of COVID still apply. Thanks again for listening. If you liked what you heard, press that follow button and share us with a friend. And don't forget, you can always see more updates and content on our social media accounts just by searching @Cape or Cap.